Although nothing is official yet, we know that yesterday it was reported that the Giants made a surprising hire on their offensive staff. That would be former Chiefs offensive coordinator Matt Nagy, who would be asked to groom quarterback Jackson Dart. We'll head to Kansas City and find out all about what Nagy could bring to the table next on the Big Blue Breakdown Live. Hi again, everybody. Paul Dottino with you, and so glad you could join us for another edition of the Big Blue Breakdown Live at our usual time, Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, as we go on for at least an hour, perhaps even 90 minutes. It's all up to you guys as you interact with me via chat or via audio or video call. You can always use the QR code up there in the corner of your screen or the link down below me that is also on your screen if you'd like to either phone or video call in. So what can we talk about tonight? Well, as I've already teased to you and I've already put up as the tease on Twitter, I've got some dynamite information, the best information you're going to find anywhere on Matt Nagy and what he did with the Kansas City Chiefs and why the Giants think he is the next guy up on the staff list to groom Jackson Dart. You know, it's funny. When I talked to Danan Hughes, and you folks will remember, he's originally from Bayonne, New Jersey, was a spectacular high school player, an all-state player, and then wound up landing with the Kansas City Chiefs and played several years with that squad in the AFC West. When I talked to Danan, and he's been on the broadcast team for over a decade with the Chiefs, whether it was pre- and post-game show or now for the last 6 years as their game analyst in the play-by-play booth. When I talked to Danan earlier yesterday, and then we actually taped our segment this afternoon, but when I talked to him yesterday about doing the spot, he couldn't wait to do it. He was excited. He was thrilled. He is a big Matt Nagy fan. We went through not only some of the positives, but also some of the potential negatives or potential question marks on Nagy's resume. And he will give us, or he will give you, when you get a chance to listen to him in just a little bit, some very detailed answers with strong conviction as to why he thinks he is the right guy to get Jackson Dart and the Giants to the next level. So we all know about the connections, right, between John Harbaugh, Andy Reid, and, of course, Nagy. The fact that Harbaugh was in Philadelphia, then Nagy was in Philadelphia, so both of them had a chance to work under Reid. Then, obviously, years later, Nagy winds up with Kansas City twice over the course of the last several years, working under Andy Reid. And as it stands right now, again, reportedly, Nagy is going to be the offensive coordinator for the Giants. And you can bet that Andy Reid and John Harbaugh had a very extensive conversation in discussing this potential hire. The Giants still have a bunch of hires that have not been made. And I think it's probably a good time just quickly to go over where it stands, at least according to the reports. Now, as you probably know from me doing the Big Blue Kickoff live show on Giants.com during the day, we have discussed all of these staff hires as reports because the Giants have still not confirmed any of the names that you have read. It is my understanding, John Schmilk was able to pass the word down to us on the Big Blue Kickoff live staff, that he was under the understanding that the Giants will announce the entire staff at once. They're not going to piecemeal it out. So that's the reason that you haven't heard the Giants make any comments on any of these people. But having said that, I think it's probably important just to get you caught up quickly on the scorecard, just briefly before we get to any of the details about Matt Nagy. And besides, quite frankly, there are a lot of people on the East Coast who are just finishing up their dinner, and I want to give them some time to get in here because, if we play the Matt Nagy interview and all of a sudden they're going to miss it. And I don't want them to do that, because that's really the meat and potatoes of our program tonight, because we're bringing you something that nobody else has. A guy who has been embedded in the Kansas City Chiefs organization for both of Matt Nagy's tenures with the Chiefs, and knows in detail exactly what the workings are, how Nagy worked with Kansas City, what he did, what he didn't do, what he wants to do, what he'd like to do. And so there's no better guest than Danan Hughes to give you that info. So we're going to get to that in just a bit. But just to get you briefly caught up on exactly what's going on with the Giants, I guess, staff search. We know John Harbaugh is their head coach. We believe, according to reports, the offensive coordinator is Matt Nagy, the defensive coordinator is Danan Wilson, and the special teams coordinator is Chris Horton. Wilson coming from the Titans, but had a background as the DB coach under Harbaugh with the Ravens. Horton was the special teams coach down in Baltimore. There is no quarterbacks coach yet, as far as we know. We believe, according to reports, that Willie Taggart, the running backs coach from Baltimore, is coming up. We believe that Chad Hall, the former Giants assistant quarterbacks coach, we believe he is going to be this year's wide receivers coach. We believe that Tim Kelly, the Giants' former tight ends coach, who then became their interim offensive coordinator, will be the tight ends coach this year. We don't think that we have heard anything about the offensive line coach. However, the assistant offensive line coach reportedly is Grant Newsome, who comes from the University of Michigan. Defensive line-wise, there's Dennis Johnson and assistant Matt Robinson. Offensive outside linebackers coach Charlie Bullen has reportedly agreed to stay in that role, even though he was interim defensive coordinator at the end of last season. But there have also been a couple of teams asking for permission to talk to him. I believe Dallas did at one point. I think the Cardinals are the latest team to do that. We will see where that situation lies. There is no linebackers coach per se, but apparently Matt Pease, former Ravens coach, has reportedly become the Giants' assistant linebackers coach. Donald D'Alessio, real Paisan name, you got to like that one. Reportedly, he comes to the Giants as their secondary coach, and then their quality control guys and analysts and other things of that nature. We don't even have to go that far onto the staff list. But that's the checklist as it stands right now. There is no timetable as far as we know, because the Giants have not indicated, nor did John Harbaugh indicate when he got the job over a week ago, what the timetable would be to complete his staff. Of course, with a record-tying 10 head coaching openings during this offseason, think about it. Most of these NFL staffs nowadays have at least 25 staff members on them, which means there's an awful lot of guys out there playing musical chairs trying to land themselves an NFL assistant's job, coaching job. And so there's a lot of moving parts here, an awful lot of moving parts. In fact, James O'Keefe, I do want to just get to this one quickly too, because it is kind of part of the news of the day. James O'Keefe, NY2TC, says Dawn Aponte, she's from the NFL office, has spent since the 2017 season with the league in the front office, reportedly coming to the Giants as the new VP, contract negotiator, and salary cap specialist. She's a very interesting lady, by the way. Graduate from Wagner College on Staten Island, got her law degree, and has been with the NFL in the football operations department since 2017. Started out in the NFL with the Jets in 94, was there to 2005. That was during part of the Bill Parcells regime. Then went to work for the league from 06 to 08. Worked for the Browns from 09 to 10. The Dolphins from 2010 to 16, which is where Joe Shane had some crossover with her when he was working with personnel and as a scout with the Miami Dolphins. And then finally in 2017, joining the NFL. So that's a little about Dawn Aponte. She would be the person who replaces Kevin Abrams, the Giants salary cap specialist who was here for over 2 decades, quite a long time. He had been brought in under the Ernie Accorsi regime. He was recently let go, and Dawn will be the new salary cap guru, reportedly, for the Giants, replacing Kevin Abrams. So that's the other piece of news, aside from the coaching staff, that we can at least speculate about because the reports have been out there. But again, no confirmation from anybody to this point. Other quick news and tidbit items. The Associated Press has their offensive and defensive rookie of the year votings out there. The finalists have been announced, even though they've already tabulated the ballots. I don't believe they're going to announce the winners until NFL honors this week. Jackson Dart is amongst the finalists for the NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year, and Abdul Carter is among the finalists for the NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. I would expect that Dart has a better chance than Abdul Carter. Carter, as we know, was very impactful early, less impactful in the middle of the schedule, and then very impactful over the course of the last month of the season or so. But I would suspect that that's not going to be enough to get him the award. Dart, on the other hand, I think he's got a better chance. I think he'll finish higher in the voting. But I also suspect that Ted McMillan, the wide receiver from the Carolina Panthers, had over 70 catches for 1,000 yards. They did make the playoffs. I know it was kind of a bruised playoff spot, but they did make it. And so I have a suspicion that McMillan probably is going to be the NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year. That's just the way I see it. But who knows how it's going to go. I certainly would have no problem voting for Jackson Dart. In fact, I'm telling you, I probably would if I had a vote. I do not have a vote as it stands right now. Couple other quick items in terms of what is going on with these teams as they play their musical chairs. We know we've got, in just about a month, free agency opens up. The Giants still have the rights up until the time free agency opens to unrestricted free agent to-bees, Jermaine Illuminor, Cordell Flott, Greg Van Roten, right? As well as Micah McFadden, and also Daniel Bellinger. Now, in all honesty, I'm a big proponent of trying to keep your own guys, especially when they're good teammates, high-quality individuals, they're workmanlike, and when you like what they do for you. Of course, you want the production to be there too, but most importantly, besides the production, the second item that you want besides production when you're trying to retain one of your free agents is you want that guy to be a very strong asset in the locker room. And folks, I can tell you, guys like Daniel Bellinger and Jermaine Illuminor in particular are very, very strong assets in the Giants locker room. Not to say that the other free agents that I mentioned are not, because it's a good locker room. It's full of a bunch of really good guys. But those two in particular have really stepped up their presence in the Giants locker room over the course of time. And you hate to lose any guy who fits both of those gloves, if you will. Not just production, but also the ability to be a great teammate and a great locker room guy and a real pro. Now, I will say this, okay? And by the way, I forgot Dane Belton. Dane Belton's another one of those guys. All of the guys that I just mentioned, all of them. And by the way, if you didn't catch it on Big Blue Kickoff Live earlier today, Dane Belton, not only with a career-high 100 tackles as a third safety, also finished tied for 7th in the National Football League this year in special teams tackles. He turned out to be not just a good special teams cover guy, but a very good special teams cover guy who happens to be around the ball a lot. He does a nice job with turnovers. My train of thought for a second has been lost. Let me just see here. Oh, yeah. So getting back to my point, the problem becomes, as much as you want to keep those kinds of guys, and all of these guys, if you've gotten to know them, folks, as I have, being around them at practice every day and, being on the road and so forth and so on, they all love football. They all fit that one emotional requirement that John Harbaugh is bringing to this team. Not to say that Brian Daboll didn't love football or didn't want his guys to do that, but Harbaugh has mentioned this as a very heavy point of emphasis, that you really need to love football all the time. These guys, they fit that mold. Wan'Dale Robinson, of course. I'm sorry. Did I forget to mention Wan'Dale Robinson earlier before too? I don't know. Maybe one of you guys may have caught that, but I think I misspoke and did not mention Wan'Dale Robinson on that list too. Certainly loves football and has overcome injuries and became a terrific, terrific player for the Giants this past season. So the question becomes, how many of these guys can you afford to keep? How many do you believe that it's necessary to keep? Now, we've heard the salary cap, and this is something that came up over the course of the past week since our last show. The salary cap is expected to go up a minimum of about $20 million this year. The Giants, according to most of these unofficial estimates by people who do pay attention to these things, are in the middle of the pack, right there, right in the middle of the pack of salary cap room, depending upon what they do with potential extensions, restructures, void years, et cetera, et cetera. The Giants could certainly create more room than what they have now, which I believe is somewhere in the area. It's anticipated to be about $7 million. And they, no doubt, will wind up releasing some guys in salary cap casualty fashion. And they will also have to make some redos and adjustments on some other contracts to create even more space. The problem is you have guys like Illuminor who played well enough to probably get a really sweet offer from somewhere else. I think Cordell Flott is going to get a real sweet offer from somewhere else. And I do think that Wan'Dale Robinson, of course, is probably going to get the sweetest offer from somewhere else. And it's going to be extremely hard to watch the Giants not be able to chase those three guys all the way to the bank because they simply cannot do it. I would think, and Micah McFadden knows this, he's coming off of a broken foot. So he'll sign a one-year deal. It'll be a prove-it deal with incentives. And I would believe that, the odds are good that he would be back. I would believe that Dane Belton, in all likelihood, probably has a realistic chance of coming to terms as well. But, and Greg Van Roten, well, we know he keeps playing on these one-year deals because he kept thinking he was going to retire. Then he goes out there and decides that he's got to play every single game. And he's done it in each of the last 2 years. And it certainly doesn't look like he's ready to go. So I would think we're probably looking at, if he wants to keep playing, I think he'll probably wind up reasonably being with the Giants once again on another one-year deal for a very, very cap-friendly contract. Daniel Bellinger is an interesting story. He's a pro's pro, and I know the Giants want to keep him. I don't think he'll get bowled over with a free agent offer because, as we all know, most people these days in the NFL want tight ends with big receiving numbers. He's not that guy, even though he can do things in the passing game. He doesn't put up big receiving numbers, and so in all likelihood, he won't get a very rich offer in free agency. So I would think there's a legitimate, reasonable opportunity for Daniel Bellinger to return to the Giants. But anyway, I just want to go over some of those things because all of these players who have contracts that will run out over the course of the next month, there's always the possibility that, they'll agree to stay before they hit free agency. I don't think that's going to happen. I think all of these guys will hit free agency, and I don't think they'll resign before that. But just in case something should happen in that regard, a preventative strike isn't necessarily a bad thing either. Although, what is the smart business decision? Well, from a player's perspective, it's I want to hit free agency because free agency, gives me an opportunity to go out and set the market, right? That's what you do for free agency. And at the same time, if you're a team, you don't want to be bidding against yourself, right? You don't want to do that. So what do? You tell the player, go ahead. Go out to free agency, see what kind of offers you can get. Let the market set itself because we don't want to bid against ourselves. So that's kind of how it works, and that's why I don't expect anything to happen over the course of the next month. But I did want to get that out of the way because, I keep getting these questions and tweets and calls and texts and everything from not just the people out there, the fans, but a lot of friends and family. Who are the Giants going to pick at number 5? Folks, we all know that free agency comes first. And chances are it's going to have a dramatic impact on what the Giants decide to do at number 5. So that's why I just spent so much time talking about the whole free agency situation, because I do think, people need to be a little bit more aware of that and on top of that, because it really is going to have an impact on the draft. I mean, there's just no way around it. How much, I can't tell you. Nobody knows. But it will have an impact in one way, shape, or form or another, because that's just the way it goes down. Let me get to a few of your chats over here. At 8:30, we will bring in our special guest tonight. I think hopefully by then, the people on the East Coast will have finished their dessert, and they will have an opportunity to click on the program and get a load of all there is to know about Matt Nagy as he comes over from the Kansas City Chiefs. And Danan Hughes has all of that information. And so we'll talk to Danan in just about 7 minutes. But in the meantime, let's see. Iman Perry says, salute, Paul. Salute. Yes, and right back at you, my man. I love all of our regular people who continue to come back to the program. It does show that we're doing something right, because we don't believe in gossip here. We don't believe in headlines. We believe in facts. We believe in logic, rationale, and legitimate information. And we're not here to steal clicks from anybody. This is not a click-based show. This is an information-based show. And for those of you who just want to get down to the raw nuts and bolts and the X's and O's, we are very glad to have you here. Aiden Fink says, good evening, Paul, and everyone watching. Looking forward to a great show tonight. And go Seahawks on Sunday. Sorry, Tommy DeVito. Well, by the way, it is interesting that you mentioned this. Just right off the cuff, Corey Durden, defensive lineman, defensive tackle from the Patriots, was a Giant. Tommy DeVito, third quarterback on the Patriots, was a Giant. I mean, just off the top of my head, I haven't actually spent time looking at the rosters of the 2 Super Bowl teams. We know that Leonard Williams was a Giant on Seattle now, and we know that Julian Love is a former Giant on Seattle. Just right off the top of my head, 2 players on each team. Obviously, the 2 on Seattle much more significant than the 2 on the Patriots. But right off the bat, if you're a Giants fan, you're going to want to watch the game, and you'll at least have some interest in watching how those former Giants play in the pinnacle game of the National Football League season. And I will tell you, and you guys know this, if you've known me for any period of time at all, I am a huge Leonard Williams fan. I was when he came out of USC. That's why it was frustrating to me when the Jets were able to grab him. They didn't use him properly. As a result, a lot of people there thought he underachieved. The Giants make the trade for him. He starts getting noticed. They used him properly. He busts out and starts playing exactly like I expected him to when he came out in the college draft. And dynamite player. And I'm so glad for him that when the time came and it was a salary issue, they knew they weren't going to be able to re-sign him. Big time money. They got the offer. Joe Schoen went to Leonard Williams and said, hey, what do you want to do? We got offers. Seattle wants you. I believe the Buffalo Bills were also interested. Seattle had the best offer. Joe Schoen asked Leonard Williams, what would you like to do? Out of respect for him, because he was such an outstanding Giant and such a professional, a leader, a great teammate. And Leonard Williams said, yeah, I think I wouldn't mind going to Seattle. I'm back on the West Coast, which he's a California guy. He loved being at USC. I'd be back on the West Coast. He knew that obviously Seattle was going to be in a position to be able to pay him. And also he figured Seattle's a playoff contender and they will have a chance to maybe do something while the Giants are in the middle of retooling. And so that's how he wound up with Seattle, and always left the door open that in free agency, if the numbers worked out and there was a chance, that he was welcome back on the Giants, and he said he would certainly consider coming back. Of course, that never happened because the Seattle was smart enough to pony up the money and lock him up to an extension. Anyway, it's impossible for me to root against Leonard Williams. Impossible. I have a good friend of the Patriots organization. I can't root against him either. So I'm going to watch this game with neutral interest. I will not be rooting for either team, but I will have people on either side that I will be happy for when they win the game. James O'Keefe, NY2TC, says, hi, Paul. Never did I think Charlie would be the voice of reason. Oh, my God, what in the world is coming to Charlie, one of the callers on the Big Blue Kickoff live show, who consistently finds reasons to be negative. Almost never has a positive thing to say. And yet he seemed to be looking at the bright side and the glass half full with the reported hiring of Matt Nagy as the Giants offensive coordinator. Benjamin Carrasco, 1834. Paul Dottino is one of my favorites. Appreciate you. And I appreciate you back. So thankful that you decided to join the program. And even more so, I appreciate the kind words. Let's see. What do we have here? Big Giant 65. Now that the Giants have hired the core coaching staff, well, not really. Quarterback coach is a big deal. Offensive line coach is huge. If I can channel a little Ric Flair in there, right? So let's hold our horses on that. But you'd like to know, what do you think it changes for impending Giants free agents? We talked about some of those names. John mentioned to me on BBKL yesterday, he's like, I wonder, Wan'Dale Robinson is such a great fit for the stuff that Nagy runs. Might the Giants be a little more apt to pony up more money to try to keep Robinson? That's a very, very interesting question. I don't know that it's going to matter with the other players, but I think it could matter with Robinson. I just don't know if they're going to be able to chase him high enough up the ladder to keep him. Let's see. Abe Lincoln, 6785. Dable was the perfect match at one time, too. Well, I don't think anybody would dispute that Dable, as far as Jackson Dart is concerned, was absolutely right. He liked the kid from the start when they scouted him, when they interviewed him, when they brought him in. Really basically insisted to Joe Shane that don't miss out on this kid. Go back into the end of the first round and trade to get him. Well, I think the evidence so far says Brian Daboll was right. And you know what? From the minute Jackson Dart got here, he worked his butt off with Jackson Dart to make sure that Dart would fulfill his potential. And for every minute that Brian Daboll was still the Giants head coach, he did just that. Aiden Fink says, Dear NFL Voting Committee, please give Paul Dottino a vote. Dart deserves Offensive Rookie of the Year. All right, let's see here. You know what? It is 8:30, and I did promise you guys that as we got to 8:30, I would go to our very special guest, and I'm going to do that right now, and we will get to more of your chats in just a bit. And what I'm going to do is after the first 10-minute segment of our interview with our special guest, I'll open it up for, again, a few short minutes. We'll try to catch up on the chats, and then maybe we'll see about a video or an audio call after we finish the complete interview with Chiefs radio analyst Danan Hughes, who played wide receiver for Kansas City, again, has been on their broadcast team for more than a decade. He's from Bayonne, New Jersey. The man's got a lot of Jersey pride. We had a lot of conversations about Jersey off the air. He is very excited for the Giants and for Matt Nagy. But here's the point. So we believe that Nagy's drawn the assignment as the Giants offensive coordinator, although the team has made nothing official. What does he bring to the table? In 14 of his 18 seasons in the National Football League, he has worked under future Hall of Fame head coach Andy Reid, first in Philadelphia, then in Kansas City. In between those years, Nagy was the head coach of the Chicago Bears. That was from 2018 to 2021. Now, that first year, Bears did well. He was named NFL Coach of the Year. And then after that, much like the Brian Daboll saga, things started to slide downhill. During his time with the Bears, Nagy twice gave up the play calling and then took it back, and then gave up the play calling and took it back. In subsequent interviews, he talked about how he was overwhelmed. He had never been a head coach before. And when he got to the Bears, it was his first head coaching job at any level. And he admits that he micromanaged and he was overwhelmed by handling both jobs at once. You folks know my philosophy. I will always prefer a CEO head coach and someone who allows the coordinators to call the plays. It's my preference. I watched Bill Parcells do it and win 2 Super Bowls for the Giants. I watched Tom Coughlin do it and win 2 more Super Bowls for the Giants. So therefore, it's my frame of reference. That's how I roll. Well, turns out that it sounds like Matt Nagy believes that if he had to do it again, and he wants to do it again as a head coach in this league, didn't get that opportunity in this go-round, he was overwhelmed and micromanaged, trying to not only call the plays, but be the head coach at the same time. He also believes that he made a second very big mistake. He hired too many people that he was congruent with on the coaching staff. So he did not have enough of fresh ideas, new ideas, and checks and balances on the coaching staff to identify problems, identify fixes, and to move the needle forward. So those were 2 things that Matt Nagy says he learned from his experience as a head coach with the Bears that didn't go so well. So that brings us to now. Andy Reid was always known as the play caller with the Kansas City Chiefs. So when I tracked down former Chiefs wide receiver Danan Hughes earlier today, and again, over 10 years as a Chiefs radio analyst, I asked Danan for a scouting report on Matt Nagy, starting with the dynamic between Reid and Nagy as they tried to handle the offense. Who did what? How did it work? Was it more of a compromise? Did they work in unison with each other? Basically, I needed to know how that operation went down because none of us outside really know. But Danan Hughes is an insider. He knows how the Chiefs operated and what Nagy was all about.
Okay, well, what is your definition of calling plays? Because I feel like there's a misnomer and a misunderstanding or mischaracterization, I should say, in regards to calling plays. Because I believe, in answering your question, that it's a combination when you talk with Andy Reid. And I believe that this is the case with any coach. If you have a defensive-minded coach, the defensive coordinator is there, but the defensive-minded coach is making some calls, head coach. If you have an offensive-minded head coach, if you're Sean Payton in Denver and you have an offensive coordinator, who's actually calling the plays? It's both of them. So I feel like Andy has always created that dynamic where there's input, involvement, preparation, game planning, etc. And then when we're on the sidelines and you're up in the booth and I'm on the sideline, if I'm Andy Reid, we are in constant communication about what plays should work, what plays we should call in certain situations. And just like any head coach, I have the authority to veto what you may say or not say. I played for Marty Schottenheimer for 6 years, defensive-minded coach. Right. He was involved in offensive play calls, even though Paul Hackett and Jimmy Ray were established offensive coordinators. He was involved in calling offensive plays. It may be, hey, let's run the ball to the wide side of the field this play. Let's reestablish the run on this drive. Let's go deep. And then the offensive coordinator would make the call of whichever play was selected. And I feel like that's the case with Matt Nagy. What I've known from him, very personable guy. I think he'll be an asset to the Giants organization because what we do know is he knows how to exist amongst stardom. And I think that's a huge thing when you talk about coaching. It's one thing to coach young guys, and he's getting a knock because of the stint with Chicago and not being able to develop a young quarterback. Oh, by the way, Mitchell Trubisky, he's still in the league, right?
Right.
He didn't do a terrible job there in regards to being a quarterback. It's just that he didn't have the successes that everybody wanted or expected, especially as a top pick. But being able to coach superstars is a unique talent as well. And Matt Nagy has shown that ability on 2 separate occasions here in Kansas City to be able to coach superstar talent, specifically in Patrick Mahomes, and then also when you add in the Kareem Hunts and obviously Travis Kelce. Now you have Jackson Dart up there who has shown glimpses of stardom. And I feel like he can be a huge asset because of his experiences with Alex Smith, a longtime starter, veteran, and transitioning into Patrick Mahomes, and then having the successes of Super Bowls with Patrick, and then now going to a place where a second-year starter who had some true glimpses of stardom in his rookie year, where when you lose all those close games, it tells you that you're not that far off. And so I feel like Matt Nagy can be that guy. As far as who's calling the plays or not, I think he's understanding the role of quarterback. I mean, I should say head coach has the final say, but I'm going to have input. And I think that's pretty much what's uniform across the league.
Taking what you've said into account, that Nagy's personality and his input and his ideas are very visible in what we have seen from the Chiefs offense over these last several years. We know that, Mahomes has played banged up. We know the wide receiving core has been banged up and hasn't necessarily been maybe as high a level as they've wanted it to be. How do you feel he has helped navigate that offense? And is it too simple to say, well, he's from the Andy Reid tree and the West Coast tree?
Yeah, I think that's kind of unfair. The toughest job for Andy Reid, Matt Nagy, Eric Bieniemy, etc., is running. How much do you implement the run game here in Kansas City? I don't think he's going to have that same problem in New York, but in Kansas City, it's a very difficult dynamic in regards to the run game. And here's the simplest way I explain it to people. The best player in the NFL is Patrick Mahomes and has been for several years. Every time you hand the ball off, you take the ball away from the best player in the NFL. So I would believe, and this is just from a human's perspective, there was probably sleepless nights from Andy Reid and the offensive coaches and quarterback coaches that have been along this run of 7 straight years of AFC championships and Super Bowl appearances, etc., in how much will we take the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands? Well, is 10 enough? Is 15 enough? Is 20 enough? Like, how much do we do that? So I feel like once you are separated from Patrick Mahomes, you'll likely be more balanced because you won't have to deal with that dynamic of Patrick Mahomes is the best player. We can throw the ball 50, 60 times a game, and we'll still be in a position to win because we have the resume of winning like that. And now it's almost like he'll be able to exhale just a bit and be more complete as an offensive coordinator and play caller by being away from Patrick Mahomes and having to develop the Cam Scatterbows, if he's healthy, as well as Jackson Dart and that run game, and as well as indoctrinating Malik Neighbors in the passing game as well.
Now, Dart, of course, is one of the more mobile quarterbacks in this league. He's not going to be a Lamar Jackson like what Harbaugh had in Baltimore, because that guy's a 1,000-yard rusher. You won't see that from Jackson Dart. But much like Mahomes, he's got escapability and can do a lot of improv. Is Nagy the type of coach who will encourage that, who will shy away from that? Because we've often heard, even this past season, the Giants coaching staff would always say you don't want to take the personality out of your quarterback.
Yeah, and I think that's one dynamic that Matt Nagy will take away from the Andy Reid coaching tree, and that's one of the attributes that you've always heard about Andy Reid, is that he allows his players to showcase their personalities, and I think you have to have a coaching staff that buys into that. It would be counterproductive, and we definitely would not have had the successes that we have had thus far, Paul, if you have an offensive coordinator, quarterback coach contradicting the head coach and that philosophy of allowing that personality to shine. I would just say his toughest job as the offensive coordinator for the Giants, he's probably going to have to catch Jackson Dart napping every once in a while in the locker room, on the training table, maybe sneak into his room during training camp while he's sleeping and just whisper to him, slide. Just slide. Just get down and get out of bounds. Don't take a hit, young man. Try to brainwash him a little bit into not taking those hits. And he's probably, if I'm Matt Nagy, I'm probably coming along with some film of Patrick Mahomes. Hey, you have this ability. You have the escapability. You have the improv. You have the DNA, just like this guy, number 15, that I've coached, that has won 3 Super Bowls and been to 5. And look what he's doing. Let's look at the last Super Bowl that the Chiefs won against the 49ers, and in the fourth quarter, driving the field, in overtime, driving the field and needing a touchdown to score. Look at how many times he slid. Look at how much yardage he got. Look at all the improv that he was able to partake of. That's, to me, as a former player, the best coaches that I've ever had, Paul, are the best brainwashers. They made me believe something that I didn't necessarily know about myself. And next thing you know, I was performing it on Sundays, Mondays, and Thursdays on national TV. That's what he's going to be tasked to do, is to be able to brainwash the very talented quarterback that you guys have some moxie, has some attitude, He's wearing the chain out there. He's got the one eye with the eye black. He's got a personality. How do you cultivate that? And I feel like Matt Nagy has been in this arena here with the best. So he should be able to kind of coach him up in that same direction.
Now, I think it's very interesting when you hear Danan Hughes talk about Nagy's experience with Kansas City. They went to 3 Super Bowls while he was there. They won 2 of those 3. Nagy in Chicago, during the only time during his career that he called plays, let's see, Nick Foles was there for a cup of coffee. Mitch Trubisky was there. And the truth of the matter is, he's okay, but maybe it was Nagy who actually got him to play his best football of his professional career. I think it's pretty obvious he did if you go back and look at Trubisky's stay in the league. And then he also had Fields. I mean, to be honest with you, was there a whole lot to work with? So a lot of people are down on Nagy because of the experience, or at least a lot of the losing experience that he had with the Chicago Bears. Again, first season, coach of the year, and then the slide, much like Brian Daboll. So we'll talk more with Danan Hughes in just a little bit, because I do want to get back you folks who are chiming in here on the chat. We'll take some more of your chats, and then we'll go right back to Danan and finish up the interview with him. He was very gracious with his time. And there's more detail coming up in the second part of the conversation in terms of specifically what he thinks Nagy does that is going to be so positive and so good for Dart and the Giants. There's more specifics coming up in the second part of the talk. We'll get to that in just a bit. Mikey C, 6894. Inside linebacker positions should be number 1 on their draft boards. The best OC should be first on their free agent list. Okay, I'm not sure I totally understand the comment, but we move on. James O'Keefe, NY2TC. If we lose Bellinger and Luminor, they will flourish somewhere else for sure. I sure hope we keep them. Belton, Wandell, and McFadden as well. James, you're not going to be able to keep them all. It's just not going to happen. Okay? It's not going to happen. And the most expensive ones are going to be the toughest ones to keep. And by the way, that's because the Giants had a very respectable roster this year. Again, I've told you this before, folks. Don't be fooled by the 4 wins. This roster was a lot better than 4 wins. It was an attractive job for a lot of people. And the reason is because it's not a 4-win roster. James also says, Van Roten was at the Harbaugh presser. Why go if you're not interested in being around? I would concur, but that still doesn't mean he's going to be re-signed. I hope he does. I know when Greg Van Roten came to the Giants before the 24 season, in training camp when he arrived, he said he was ready to retire. So he's already gone 2 years past what he thought he was going to do. And he said the reason that he came back was because it was with the Giants. Not only that it was a great organization, as you know, he was certainly respectful of the reputation of the franchise, but also because he's from Long Island. And he did not feel like if he was going to continue his career, he wanted to go very far away. So the proximity to his home in Long Island, again, that's where he's from, was a very big factor in him coming here. And what has he done? He's played in every single game. Hasn't come out of the lineup. And has been steady. There's no doubt in my mind that he's worth keeping on at 53 this year. But he's got to decide for the 3rd straight season if he wants to retire or if he still wants to play. And you know what they say about players all the time. Once you start thinking about retirement, mentally you are retired and you need to step away. Van Roten has been exactly the opposite of that. Somehow he has not only played those 2 years, but been a starter and been very steady and very consistent and durable. Pretty incredible. It's a heck of a story. Mikey C 6894 says trade a few spots and draft Sonny Styles. I guess he means trade down a few spots because Styles isn't going to be picked in the first 5, I don't think. Oh, Aiden Fink says Drew Lock too. Yes, Drew Lock is a backup on the Seattle Seahawks. That is correct. It's funny about how he and Tommy DeVito, right? Teammates on the Giants, now on separate sides in the Super Bowl. That's right, Aiden. Good catch. Oman Duda says, I wish I was old enough to remember before free agency. No, you don't, Oman. You know why? Because it would make you sick at how the game has changed. It really would. Plan B free agency was great. It really, really was. You've heard me talk about it on BBKL. You've heard me talk about it on this show. I'm not going to go into detail over it again. But for those of you who may not be regulars to this program and who don't understand, antitrust lawyers decided that Plan B free agency, when every team could protect X number of players on their roster and then leave like a dozen players unprotected on the back end, and only those guys would be eligible for unrestricted free agency and then could be plucked by another team. It was determined by the legal system that was an antitrust violation, and so the NFL had to do away with Plan B free agency. It allowed teams to grow. It allowed teams to nurture their players, to keep continuity, to develop players, to get the fruits of your labor. When you coached up a player, you were able to keep him. It was everything that pro football should be. But the legal system said that was not allowed. And so in 93, after the 93 season, when the salary cap came into play, because after all, once the players union was able to strike down Plan B free agency, well, now you had this unrestricted free agency that was going to be in play. And of course, the owners were like, well, unrestricted free agency means a free-for-all bidding war for every single player as soon as they hit the market. And that's going to be insane. We can't have out-of-control spending. So we have to have a salary cap. So they put the salary cap into play. And so what has happened? Plan B free agency and the salary cap, in my opinion, have done more to water down the overall quality of the league and create what most people say is parity, but I think is mediocrity. And it's a shame because you get more good quality players getting cut because of their contracts and not because of their abilities, which is the way it should be in the National Football League. Coaches and general managers and personnel directors should be able to hold on to players and not have to get rid of them because of contractual reasons. You should allow those people to make decisions based on what they see on the field. All right, Aman. See, you made me revisit that. You turned my stomach now. I also have a headache because it just galls me at how great the league was back in the day. So no, you don't wish you were old enough to remember how great it was because it would make you mad at what has become of the whole salary cap and free agency era. Isaac Moore, 1248, says, Nagy doesn't impress me at all. What have you seen or heard of him that would make me feel better about him? Isaac, I don't have to say anything to you. That's why I got Danan Hughes on the program tonight. He's telling you more stuff and more accurately than anybody else could. Listen to the rest of his interview, and then you decide if you've heard some things that make you feel better. That's all I'm going to say. Mikey C, 6894. I'm rooting for former Jets, Leonard Williams, and Sam Darnold, and sprinkle of Giants love. Okay. Scott Young, 1669. Jeff Stoutland has left the Eagles. Yes, their offensive line coach. He says, Paul, that's someone we should try to get ASAP. I do not know the circumstances of him leaving Philadelphia. I do believe that he has time on his contract. So there may be a bunch of legalities there in addition to whatever the rationale was for him to pack up. So I don't really think I have anything else to say right now until we learn more. Monduda says, always love and rooting for Leonard Williams. Leo. Mikey C, 6894, says, hired the Birdies O-line coach. Yeah, all right, I see. Isaac Moore, 1248, says, shout out to Bayonne and Danan Hughes, former superstar high school wide receiver. Mikey C also says, P-Dot, what do you think of former Jets offensive coordinator as passing coordinator? If there's one other thing that kind of gets a little over the top for me is that, you know, the NFL used to have 6, 8, 9, 10 head coaches on a staff. Now they have 25 or 30 apiece. Position coaches have assistant position coaches. There are quality control coaches, game management coaches. I mean, passing game coordinator coaches, plus quarterbacks coaches, assistant quarterbacks coaches, offensive coordinator coaches, run game coordinator coaches. We've gone absolutely bonkers with adding staff upon layers of staff in the National Football League. So I'm sorry, Mikey C. I'm going to focus my efforts on the main staff jobs that have existed for many, many years. And I am not going to think too much about the periphery or assistant to assistants or sub coaches, if you will, sub-positional coaches. I respect the jobs. I understand the game has supposedly become so much more complicated and specialized to where these NFL coaches truly believe they need that many people on the staff. I understand that's the way they are. That's what they think they need. If they can utilize these people and win, God bless them. I know that John Harbaugh had many more coaches on his staff in Baltimore than the Giants did here. So I'm sure he is going to continue adding to that coaching staff directory in East Rutherford. I'm sure of that. And again, if that's what it takes for him to bring a winner here, well, then go for it, my man. Go for it. Absolutely. I will never criticize somebody who is able to prove that the value is there, right? The ends justify the means. I just say that I know that there were great teams, dynasties, if you will. You know, you think about the old Steelers, the old Dallas Cowboys, the Vikings, the Broncos, the Dolphins, the Raiders, you know, some of the great teams of the 70s and 80s, they didn't need 24 or more coaches on their staffs. But again, the game has become so much more specialized and so much more detailed. I suppose there is a need for it. I just know that I saw great football and great champions and great Hall of Famers when the game was a lot more simple. Let's put it that way. Jesse Martinez, 4461. Paul, good evening. And good evening to you. Been a G-Man fan since 1975. Yeah, that's Shea Stadium, 1975. Remember it well. Question. Now that we have Nagy with the 5th pick, will he get O-line or receiver? One would think that if the Giants go offense at pick 5, it would have to be an offensive lineman or a wide receiver. A lot could depend on the need and grade component meshing together. I do think the need and grade component at wide receiver, taking Tate out of Ohio State, is a really sensible and logical pick as I sit here today. I have only started to do my research for the draft. I will be at the Combine at the end of the month. That will be a very big week for me. We're going to do a live show again, I believe, from the Combine as we did last year. We're going to at least try to do it. And I hope you guys are able to check that out. So that's how I feel about the wide receiver spot. Now, the offensive line spot's a little different, right? We got to find out about free agency there, because we know that if there is a lineman, and there are potentially two linemen, we know who they are, right? We all know who they are. I don't have to go through them, who could potentially be that high of a selection. But what are you doing with your offensive line right now? Is Illuminor coming back? If he doesn't, is Marcus Bowe in line to be your starting right tackle? And what does the new coaching staff think about Marcus Bowe? Did they see enough tape on him, and did they study him enough at Purdue to believe that he could be a starting right tackle in 2026? Or do they think that he should be a starting right guard in 2026? Then the potential exit of Illuminor could, in fact, leave a very large void where, if you're going to pick a tackle at number 5 in the draft, you would insert him in the opening day lineup as quickly as you possibly could. So the need component changes dramatically based on what happens in free agency and what the Giants think about Marcus Bowe. But you're right. Offensively, it's got to be one of those two spots. It's got to be offensive line, or it's got to be wide receiver. If they're going to go defense with that pick at number 5, one would have to think, right? There's a corner there, potentially. We know about the safety, Caleb Downs, obviously, Ohio State. There's no question he would be a guy you could definitely pick with value there at 5 if you want to go there. Now, Denard Wilson, the reported defensive coordinator, likes to play the big nickel, which means a lot of a 3 safety package. Well, do you think you're going to get a bounce back year out of Tyler Nubin? Do you think that you're going to get a good year out of Belton if he comes back? See, that's the other thing. We don't even know if Belton's coming back, because if he's not, you absolutely need a 3rd safety. So that changes the need component. And don't get me wrong, I'm not comparing Belton to Downs. Downs has tremendous upside. He looks like he could be a potential Pro Bowl player. So I'm not comparing the two, but I'm simply talking about the need quotient here in the equation. And then there's Javon Holland. Top safety on the free agent market this past season, didn't play like it for the Giants this year. They need him to bounce back and play like he's supposed to play. So these are all things you've got to figure out. But I could see people are talking about Styles. I get it. Styles will be a top 10 pick. Downs is certainly going to be a top 10 pick. I don't think Peter Woods is going to be a top 5. Could he potentially be a top 10? I'm not sure. The defensive tackle out of Clemson. He would be the defensive tackle that I would want if you were going to take a defensive tackle in the 1st round. I mean, so in theory, you could probably pick any position in the 1st round on defense and find value and need coming together. That's the difference between the defense and the offense with the Giants. The board is going to be wide open on defense, I believe. On offense, it's going to be restricted to offensive line and wide receiver. At least that's how I see it as we sit here today. Again, free agency can change a lot. James O'Keefe, NY2TC. Once Plan B went, the cesspool of mediocrity began in the NFL. I call it the quicksand, my friend. I don't like to use that. That's just too negative. LV Giant 72. Hi, Paul. What are your thoughts if the NFL should consider renaming the Pro Bowl? Because it's not really a bowl game. Just a thought, since it's more like a fan fest than a bowl game. I agree with you 1,000%. I don't like what's happened to the Pro Bowl at all, but I do understand it. I'm not crazy enough to argue against it. I understand it. But I'm with you. I do think probably a name change would be better. Armand Duda says, Illuminor is my biggest priority we can realistically keep. All right. That's it for the chats for the moment. We have now passed the top of the hour. I want to get back to the second part of my interview with Kansas City Chiefs radio analyst Danan Hughes, who has given us some tremendous insight on what Matt Nagy is all about and what he brings to the table. And, you know, one of the things that Giants head coach John Harbaugh stressed to the media at his press conference when he talked about constructing his staff is that he truly wanted teachers. That's something Joe Judge was after too. And we heard Harbaugh emphasize it over and over and over again when he was at the podium and then even when he left the podium and talked to the beat writers on the side. Now, Danan Hughes says that Nagy fits that mold perfectly.
I definitely believe that. And one component of that is I don't ever see Matt Nagy I love coaches that screamed and yelled. Personally, that might make me a little twisted from Bayonne. I get it. I like coaches. I always appreciated coaches that yelled because I always felt like the ones that were really quiet might have been a little deceptive. They might be smiling in my face and saying stuff behind my back. And then the other component is if you're screaming, if you're a screamer and you're quiet, that must mean I'm doing something right. So I always appreciated that those two levels of coaching. But the one thing about Matt Nagy is that I've seen him keep an even keel kind of approach, just like Andy Reid does on the sideline. And I think that's really been a part of our success is that very rarely, everybody's human, and there's going to be hot times of games and times you're going to get in the face of officials and you're going to have screaming matches on the sideline. But I would venture to believe that we are one of the few teams that have had the fewest incidents of that in all of the close games, tight games, come from behind games, questionable calls, etc., that we don't have the sideline antics. And you have to have a coach that believes in that approach. And that's what Matt Nagy brings. So to me, he's genuine. He's kind of calm, cool, and collected, but he can definitely get on you if you need to be. And that's when I think guys' ears will perk up if he has to become that guy. But I think he's so balanced, and that's why he's so respected, and that's why I respected him as a coach.
This may be an unfair question, Danan, because I'm sure you don't get a copy of the playbook every week. But based on what you have seen, and how difficult do you believe that playbook that he's bringing to the Giants is to learn? I mean, I'm sure that Harbaugh will have some say in what he's going to ask him to do, but is Dart going to have a difficult time studying and learning what it is that Nagy wants to bring to the table?
Never have I heard anybody say things are too complex, things are too wordy, things change too much. We're thinking too much on the field and not reacting. That has never been the case, Paul. So I would say that what Matt Nagy will bring to the Giants from an offensive perspective and trying to establish a culture for the offense and an identity specifically will not be too complicated. These guys are highly trained professionals. The days of the transition from college to pros and the difficulties that were perceived, those days are gone. These guys are prepared. By the time they get to the combine in a couple of weeks, they are prepared like NFL ready players. And I don't think there's ever been any kind of hindrance or any issue with all the revolving door of, let's remember, Patrick Mahomes has been a staple, but the backup quarterbacks have not. And we've had to tap into backup quarterbacks. We had three backup quarterbacks this year play in games in the final part of the season. Previous years, we've had backup quarterbacks that have had to basically lead us in playoffs when Patrick has gotten hurt, or lead us towards a playoff run in the middle of the season if he's messed up his ankle or he had his displaced kneecap. different things like that. And there's never been a time where anybody has ever sat up in the booth, in the locker room, and said, "Oh my gosh, what do we got ourselves into? What are we? What kind of issues are we going to have now because we have to go to our backup or our backup's backup or our backup's backup's backup this past season?" So I don't feel like that should be a concern for any of the Giants fans.
What would fans expect to see of a Matt Nagy offense? We hear the reputation about a lot of motion with the receivers.
Mm-hmm.
We'll probably see a lot of shotgun out of the quarterback. Those are the kinds of things we hear. But then we've also heard more from Chicago than from Kansas City that maybe at times he gets stuck in being too repetitive and too predictable. Those are the kinds of things we've heard from the outside.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of smoke and mirrors, to be honest. As a person that's been close to this organization, and not just as a player, but as an analyst for the last 6 years, watching this, and then also when he was here the first time, I was doing pregame and postgame shows. So I was still close to all of the action and the inner workings. I just don't see it. I think there's a method to the madness, and that's what I would say to you in what they would expect is there might look like there's a lot of window dressing. It might look like there's some intricate schemes, but there's a method to the madness. And you mentioned the motions and the shifts. The one thing that we became a staple of when we've had success, and this might be something that you pay attention to, the Chiefs break the huddle, and I want to say they're probably one of the top, if not the top team in the NFL in breaking the huddle with more than 15 seconds left on the play clock. There's been rare times, especially during the successes, where you've seen us had to burn a timeout because the clock got down to 2 seconds, or Patrick Mahomes was at the line of scrimmage and seemed confused and had to call a timeout. We break the huddle with 15 plus seconds, get to the line of scrimmage. They use motions and shifts so that the defense has to tip their hand on what they're doing, blitzing, man-to-man, zone, etc. And when you have the luxury, and I know I'm getting into the football nerdisms now, my apologies, but when you have the luxury—
I love it, Danan. I love it. Go ahead.
When you have the luxury of breaking the huddle with that much time, the chess match almost becomes checkers. Because now what you as a defense have to do is you have to break the huddle. You can't scheme. You can't substitute. You can't disguise as well as you like, because now Patrick has literally 14 seconds to survey, make you tip your hand, then make a decision based on that. So, and that's all preparation, and I think that all comes from the coaching from the top down. So I feel like one aspect of the get it factor that you'll see with the Giants, one aspect of the identity factor that you'll see from the Giants next year is when they break the huddle and how much Jackson Dart is able to diagnose everything that happens so that the game will be that it will slow down for him. That will all come from the coaching.
Final question for me, Danan. I know you've been very generous with your time. How adjustable and how flexible is he to the talent that he has available to him, as opposed to trying to maybe fit guys into a box or a framework that he's comfortable with?
I think that's his number one attribute, Paul, to be honest. I think he has shown the ability, obviously in conjunction with Andy Reid, that he knows how to put people in position to make plays and to be successful. We did not have an offense that was designed for Kareem Hunt to run down the field 60 yards and catch a pass. We did not have an offense that was designed for Travis Kelce to line up at the conventional tight end position in a three-point stance and run the Gronkowski, Tony Gonzalez type of routes. We did not have an offense that asked your bigger receivers in the pass to isolate one-on-one on the outside and beat receivers down the field like you see other guys, maybe like a George Pickens or CeeDee Lamb, etc. What we saw is Xavier Worthy, very fast vertically, but also equally as fast horizontally. So we're going to run him on jet sweeps, crossing routes, deep crossers, and deep posts. Rashee Rice can be that taller physical guy, so we're going to line him up in different positions to create mismatches because he can catch the ball all over the field. Tyquan Thornton, who was a diamond in the rough this year while Rashee Rice was out on suspension and Xavier Worthy was hurt, became our deep threat, and we utilized him in that fashion. So I don't think there's going to be any question about Matt Nagy's ability to be versatile with this offense, but he's definitely going to put guys in position to be successful.
Would bring to the table as the Giants offensive coordinator, and how Jackson Dart would benefit from having a man of Nagy's knowledge and experience calling the plays. So hopefully you guys have learned a little bit more about what that's all about and the possible dynamic and the possibilities that the Giants are certainly hopeful of. I know that there's been a lot of mixed reaction out there amongst the fans. Some people have flat out seen the track record of the Chicago Bears when Nagy was there, and yes, again, I understand it started out great and then it went downhill, right? You heard I asked Danan about it, and he did not seem to think there was much of an issue there. Now, what I will say, and Danan and I kind of talked a little bit more off of the recording as well, Patrick Mahomes was badly banged up over the course of the last two seasons. That was part of the problem with a little bit of their struggling offense. They did have some injuries at running back. They certainly had a lot of trouble at depth at wide receiver, which was also a very, very tough impediment for them, given that you heard what he said. Patrick Mahomes is the best player in the league. They're going to gear their entire playbook towards Mahomes making plays. Well, guess what? Mahomes had a banged-up running back core. He had lack of depth at wide receiver. And, oh, by the way, do we really need to show you video of the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line over the last year and a half? How about we go back, not this past year, but the year before the Super Bowl, right? Not 25, but 24 season. And we show you the Super Bowl against the Philadelphia Eagles when they absolutely manhandled the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line like ragdolls. And they weren't a whole lot better this year either. So, for those people who want to say, well, it looks like these last couple of years when Nagy was the offensive coordinator with Kansas City, it didn't look as exciting as you would want it to look. Well, why don't you also kind of look at the offensive depth chart and the roster on the Chiefs during that time frame? Because there were clearly reasons why that offense did not look nearly as explosive and as effective as it did just a couple of years earlier. I mean, those things are real. All right? Just because Kansas City, went to a whole slew of Super Bowls, what was it? They went to 5 and won 3, I think it was. Just because they did that doesn't mean that they're impervious or exempt from having a bad offensive line that would then send them spiraling down into the cavern. Because guess what? When you don't have a good offensive line, 98 times out of 100, you don't have a winning team. Every once in a while, there's an aberration. Joe Burrow did it with Cincinnati. A few years ago, somehow Joe Burrow got them as far as they got with a terrible offensive line. But that's like a needle in a haystack. You're not exempt from it. Doesn't matter how good your team is. It is a long shot. Your odds are long to be a good team if you don't have a quality offensive line. At least you guys know it. Come on, it's coming. A functional offensive line at the very minimum. Got to have one. All right, let's see here. Armand Duda says, what is a coach if not a teacher? Armand, I don't know how much you've been around athletics on a daily basis, around teams, college, high school, pros. Coaches are not necessarily teachers. There are some coaches who they'll design plays or they'll be handed plays. They'll give them to their guys and they'll say, do this. And if the guy doesn't do it, they'll say, okay, do it again. Do this. And they'll show it to him again and say, do this. Well, that's the difference between a coach and a teacher. A coach who is also a teacher will tell the player, okay, do you know what happens when you do it the way you do? This, that, and the other thing. Okay? That's what's going to happen bad if you do this wrong. So why do you want to do it right? Because if you do it right, this is what we're trying to accomplish. This is not only the reason we're doing it this way, or we're telling you to do it this way, but we're also going to tell you mentally and physically how to do it that way. Some coaches are just not enough of a teacher. I once had front office people tell me many years ago, and as you know, guys, I've been doing this now I just finished my 43rd straight season of covering the Giants in the NFL. Many, many years ago, I was told by a front office executive that one of the things that rankled him the most was a position coach on the coaching staff who just went through the motions, felt like you could just add water to the player, and all you had to do was bark out what they needed to do and bark out if they did it wrong and bark out and tell them to do it again, and not truly get into the player's head to where you could explain to him the purpose, not just how to do what he needed to do, but why it was important. And what are some of the things that he could do to make sure that he could do that action effectively? That's what a teacher does. A coach who is a teacher. You know, it's funny. I was just talking to a Division I college basketball coach. I do play-by-play for Division I college basketball and college football, in addition to all the work I do with the New York Giants. And this Division I college basketball coach, his name is Luke McConnell from St. Francis, the Red Flash. I've got a game coming up with them, and I was talking to Coach McConnell, and it occurred to me to ask him a question specifically. Coach, you were back in the day when you were at St. Francis, because he's a St. Francis alum, you played defensive back. And I called some of your games when you played defensive back. I'm curious, what about your time as a D1 football player? They were at that time, it was called, I think, 1AA. I don't think they called it FCS at the time. But I said, what did you learn as a football player that you've kind of applied to your role now as a Division I basketball coach? And he said, wow, that is a great question. And I don't know that there's anything on the field that I applied, but what I have been able to do is how we broke down film as a football team. The position coaches, the guys in the room, the head coaches, we broke down film. There was a science to how we broke down film as players and coaches, and how we watched film together and what we did to break it down. There was a technique. There were tools on how we did that. And I do that now with my basketball team. I use those techniques and tools to break down basketball film with my players like I did when I was a football player. That's an example of somebody who is maybe more of a teacher than just a coach, who just barks out, follow the plan, just do this, do that, don't do this. Hopefully, Armand, you have a better idea of what I was trying to say. Armand also says, I don't like that he used the term diagnose for Dart. I don't know what that problem would be. But you don't like the word? You don't like the word. Armand, very busy on the keyboard tonight, says that was a concussion double meaning. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Not a pun that I think was necessary, but we will continue. Armand says, I trust Harbaugh not to settle for a lackluster OC his first year with a new team, especially the New York Football Giants. He wasn't at the bottom of the barrel. No, obviously not. Heck, Nagy was out there because he was hoping to get another shot at a head coaching job, and I believe he had one interview with the Tennessee Titans and didn't get it. Ironically, the hope was that if a head coaching job didn't happen, he was hoping to go somewhere where he could be an offensive coordinator and actually call the plays himself. As opposed to what Danan Hughes just told us, he believes it was more of a collaborative effort between Andy Reid and Matt Nagy. It wasn't just Reid calling the stuff on his own. He believes that there was a tag team effort between the two. Armand says, we know what a bad O-line can do after winning a Super Bowl. Yeah, that's for sure. He says there's no fun without function. Oh. Mark B, 8365, one of our regulars, says the 05 offensive line has improved, I must say. Armand says he played high school football. So, Armand, you know, I'm sure you had people on your coaching staff when you were in high school. Some guys were more teachers than others, or maybe you were lucky. And maybe you actually had a whole coaching staff of teachers that you worked with. Oh, well, wait a minute. He says, no, our offensive coordinator was definitely not a teacher, just threw temper tantrums. See, so you do understand what I was trying to explain to you, and I probably didn't even need to. You probably had it all along anyway. Armand says, I meant what a coach should be, not what they always turn out to be. Yeah, no, that's right. That's right. Okay, Mark B, 8365. Paul, I remember you said coming into last season, the offensive line personnel hasn't changed much. That continuity is so important, and it showed. You're right, Mark. Again, you know, I go back to Carl Nelson, who was the Giants' starting right tackle in Super Bowl 21 when they beat the Denver Broncos in Pasadena. And I remember Carl telling me, and I was only what? I was 4 years into my reporting career on the Giants at that point. And I remember Carl Nelson telling me specifically, it takes a minimum of 2 years. You don't have that these days because of the way free agency and the contracts and the salary cap break up the offensive lines around the league. But I remember Carl saying it takes at least 2 years for an offensive line to truly gel and to truly reach its maximum potential. And I mean, when you consider the Giants' offensive lines under Tom Coughlin, right? You know, at the beginning of that 2007 season, you had Joe Theismann getting on TV, I believe, or doing a radio interview. It was very well known where he said the Giants have the worst offensive line in football. Well, individually, right? Individually, those guys all admit that all 5 of them were not Pro Bowl players. Heck, Richie Seubert was an undrafted rookie free agent. But as a unit, as a fivesome, they wound up playing together for, 4 years? With hardly ever missing a game? I can't remember what the final number was now. And look what they did. They became, production-wise, one of the top three, if not the best offensive line in the league in 2007, win the Super Bowl, and then the remnants of that line wound up still hanging on long enough to win the Super Bowl again at the end of the 2011 season. Now, by that time, the sand was kind of running through the hourglass. They needed a retool badly by the time the 2012 season started. And unfortunately, the front office was unable to do that retooling for whatever reason. I know the coaching staff wanted it, and it just never really got done properly. And consequently, that was the beginning of an extended dry period in Giants football. I mean, yes, I understand. 16, they went to the playoffs. 22, they went to the playoffs. But that's 2 playoff spots, in the last 15 years, practically. That's rough when you consider that between, 86 and, 93. Well, don't even start 86, start 84. Parcells' rookie season was 83, and then he left after the 1990 season. You knew when Bill Parcells was there, you knew the Giants were going to be contenders every year, and they were. Heck, I've talked to many guys on those 2 Super Bowl teams that Parcells engineered, and they'll all tell you they felt they could have won a third. They really feel very strongly about that. They could have won a third. They would have probably won one in 1987 had there not been a strike. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And quite frankly, Tom Coughlin's team feels the same way. They all know they were by far the best team in the NFL in 2008. And then Plexico Burress accidentally shoots himself in the leg. Sabotage the season. Accidentally, I understand. But all the guys on that team believe that they were definitely in for a repeat. So, both of those 2-win Giants stretches easily could have been 3 Super Bowls instead of only 2. But that's the way it is. Armand says they were definitely the best O-line in 2007, 8, the best team. We had that era, but it didn't end well, sadly. Hey, look at this. Look who we have on the line. A good friend and a guy who also works for the New York Giants on SI website. You guys can catch his videos as well on the YouTube channel and New York Giants on SI Media Network. It is Coach Gene Clemens comes in. And Gene, it is great to see you, man. I know you were out at the Super Bowl. And look, just so you know, the ice has not melted back east yet.
No, and that's why I'm happy I'm not going to be back there until Sunday. I'm hoping that by the time I get back, everything has, everything has restored to normal. I live in the South, Paul, so I'm not really rocking with all the snow.
I know.
If I wanted the snow, I'd still be in Patterson, right? Like that's the truth. If I wanted snow, I'd still be in Patterson, but I don't. I'm enjoying it out here. It's absolutely like, if it's bad in the East Coast, it is the antithesis of that over here. It is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, just beautiful temperatures, beautiful weather. I'm not saying it to try to throw a little jab to you guys. I'm just blessed that I got a chance to get away for a few days. That's all.
It's okay. I got a box of Band-Aids right over here. It's fine. Good to see you, my friend.
Great to see you.
And I'm so happy for you to be able to get out there this week, because not only do you escape this weather, but you get to talk to a whole bunch of NFL people. And I'm sure you're probably collecting a lot of thoughts and a lot of little tidbits about what people around the league are saying about the Giants.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's very mixed. There seems to be very mixed feelings about the Matt Nagy hire. Nobody denies his, the fact that he comes from an area that should be really good for Dart. Like as a guy who's a +1 as a runner, he's been working with guys who are +1s as a runner. So like that should be a natural progression. The offense that the Giants are running under Dable and Mike Kafka was kind of like this melding of what Dable was doing in Buffalo and what Kafka was had come from in Kansas City. So the personnel should be pretty familiar with some of the concepts that Nagy should bring in. The question becomes in the literal play calling and the sequencing of those plays, and whether or not Nagy has kind of gotten more formulaic with it. Like, is he missing the creativity to catch people off guard? I said on a Giant issue, my only issue is that I want a coordinator to be able to elevate the players above what they can do on their own. Right. Like, and to me, watching over the past few years, it's been a lot of Patrick Mahomes just having to do it himself. There never just seemed to be anything just easy. It was always just Patrick Mahomes having to be Patrick Mahomes. And if Jackson Dart has to be like that all the time, I don't know if that's the best recipe for him to take that next step. Like, I'd love to see him get schemed open with stuff like you see Brock Purdy getting schemed open with plays, in San Francisco, where it just looks like, well, man, anybody could do that because that's just the scheme working out. That's the sequencing working out. So those have been some of the questions and the doubts that some people have had about the Nagy hiring, and the fact that it wasn't on anyone's radar. No one had it on the bingo card, right? It just kind of came out of left field. And so those are kind of those things. I'm really though excited. I'm really excited about the news about the new VP. I really am. I think that there may have just been an understanding that there was probably too much on Joe Shane's plate. And now let's lift some stuff off and allow there to be more people involved in this situation, people who might have a different view of it than maybe Shane did or does, and can help to maybe retain more of these, free agents that are homegrown for us, or for the Giants, homegrown for the Giants that fans would like to see stay here, that haven't seemed to stay here over the last few years when it comes to them hitting free agency. We're not talking about Andrew Thomas and Dexter Lawrence, because it's easy to get contracts done with guys who are still under contract, and that you're about to hand them like life-changing amounts of money.
Yes.
Right. But when it comes down to the Julian Loves of the world, when it comes down to the Leonard Williams, and should you trade him for a 3rd round pick or a 4th round pick? Should you keep him because he's really darn good at what he does, and he's proving that like the moment he stepped foot in Seattle, that defense, especially the run defense, instantly improved.
Oh, absolutely. And then they added DeMarcus Lawrence too.
And so like those are some of the things that I'm really looking forward. Like we thought that the cap was going to get better with Joe Shane at the helm. It hasn't really materialized like we thought it would. So now bringing someone in that has a lot of experience and is considered to be a cap specialist, I think is a great thing for the team as they try to retool this stuff and get these players in there necessary to take the next step.
Well, Gene, I'm glad you actually mentioned that, because Patricia Traynor, who runs the NY Giants SI site, she is very much into the whole salary cap thing. She really digs deep into the business angle of the contracts. And one of the things that, I always talk to Patty about, because that is her niche, really. She's a very specialized reporter in that area. I said to her, it's great that they got someone who's been with the NFL front office now since 2017 and probably has a wider range of tricks in her bag in terms of how to navigate these deals than maybe Joe Shane even knew. Coming from Buffalo with Brandon Beane, he had a frame of reference, but I'm not even so sure that they were using all of the different tools in the toolbox regarding these contracts. I think that Donna Ponte knows every single one of those tools. And Patty actually said to me, well, I'll tell you, there are two that interest me that the Giants have always shied away from. One are the voidable year contracts, which obviously pushes money down the road. And,
Yep.
you know, you can always argue the validity of that and the risk in doing that, but it's certainly something that Joe has not wanted to do. And I'm not being critical of him. It's just an observation. That hasn't been a tool that he's really wanted to use. And then the other one are the team options, which can also finagle ways of breaking down the money in the contracts. And we'll see. I mean, maybe Dawn, says, hey, Joe, I know that there are ways to do these that kind of limit the risk or that make the pain a little bit less. Let me show you some of these things that we can do, and maybe actually you'll be in favor of trying them.
Yeah, I'm my only question, and I love the hire. I love the fact that she gets a more prominent role. I am, however, curious, and it's not like a criticism. I just would really love to know. And if you happen to find out, let me know. Like, because I'm really interested about this. What made her decide to step away from the NFL office, where you don't have to worry about a 2-15 season costing you your job? Like, what
Right.
made her step away from the NFL office to come back into the thick of an individual franchise? Like, was it that she felt like there was maybe a ceiling that she hit, and there was no way for her to get beyond that ceiling in her current capacity? Or was it a calling that she thought maybe I could feel like I had more effect if I'm going to an individual like team? Like, was the time with the NFL, was that research in order to be able to add more tools to the tool belt, like you were talking about, so that when I come back to an organization, I have better ways to navigate this thing that maybe I didn't know about before? I'm really curious as to her why, and why it was a choice to move from the NFL back to an individual organization.
Well, Gene, I thought I saw one item where at one point she actually did have a GM interview that she did not get. Now, I just wonder if perhaps maybe that's something on her bucket list, that she would like to do that at some point in her career. And she's saying to herself, well, I've been doing this, and this for so many years. I got to get back onto the team side of things. And maybe she feels that this is her best opportunity to one day actually become the first woman's GM in the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, and it could be that simple. I just would love to hear it. Like some of the questions that I think I wanna get answered sometimes don't necessarily have anything to do with the team, and is really more just personal based, and how they make these decisions, how these people who have ascended to such high levels and been so accomplished in their career. She's been doing this for 30 years. I mean, she's one of the best. And so for her to make this decision, this wasn't something that she had to do. This was something that she chose to do. And I think that that's telling. And I would just love to be able to get into her mind and hear what she has to think about.
I think that's a very, very interesting conversation that I'm sure a lot of people would like to have. Gene, while we still have you here, is there anything else that people are saying right now about the Giants, whether it be John Harbaugh's ability? He mentioned that word playoffs. He mentioned it right at this press conference. First year, he's like, that's not out of the question. What kind of vibe are you getting people thinking about with Harbaugh and the dart combination, obviously? And, I got to tell you, they're drafting 5th in the NFL draft. You can't afford to miss that one. You're going to have to hit for sure.
Yeah. And the truth is that over the past few years, when they've had these top 5 picks, the jury is still out on, how well they've done with those opportunities. So we'll see. I'll tell you this, because I haven't heard a lot of talk about Harbaugh, particularly since I've been here. But Jackson Dart was on the road today. Oh boy, it was like he's a star. There's no other way of saying it. He's a star. Like take the football out of it and just go with the aura. It was like he was walking around with a blue and red glow around him. He just has that thing that makes people want to come towards him and talk to him and give him a high five or a hug. And then he's young and swaggy, so he has all of this like bravado that just kind of oozes off of him. And if the on-field talent continues to go the way that I believe it'll go, as long as he doesn't like destroy his body being too goofy with the running, right? Like if that happens, there won't be a quarterback in the NFL more popular than him. I firmly believe it. When he walked onto the row, it literally was just a mass of people that just walked along with him. People trying to get interviews, people trying to get him for media clips. He's on, he's over at the NBC, the NBC setup. He's going around to all of the big. He's all on the outside. You know how it goes. Like the big name people, they stay on that outside row. They don't come on the inside with us mere mortals. We're left to go and chase them. And so I was over there because I was talking with Matthew Berry, who works on the fantasy happy hour over at NBC and is somebody that I work with at his company, Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life. And I was talking with him and Lawrence Jackson, who was on that show as well. And I just saw Dart out of the side of my eye, because I just saw people moving over around him. It was just like energy over there. I'm not making this up. This isn't hyperbole. Everybody that's out there that knows me knows that I don't blow smoke. This ain't my way. So I'm gonna keep it full bean. And like just watching that and watching him. You remember the Titans?
Sure.
One of my favorite all-time sports movies. He not only looks like Kit Pardue's version of Sunshine, in that movie with the long hair, but not like a crop, just kind of short. Here, he not only looks like him, but that aura, that sunshine that Kit Pardue had in that movie, he has that fearlessness, that willing to do whatever. I mean, it would change your perspective if you saw it yourself and you weren't a fan of his. It would make you go, oh, I get it. I see now why it is what it is. Like, just, I mean, a sea of humanity over there with it. It was very impressive to watch.
Gene, it's funny because I've had a lot of people say to me, well, he's got kind of like that Baker Mayfield swagger and that Mayfield attitude. I don't see that. You know what I see more in Jackson Dart? I see more Phil Simms in Jackson Dart.
Okay.
I see toughness. I see a guy who's more of a football player mentality-wise than he is just a quarterback. Now, that can get you into trouble because, as we've seen, he takes a few more hits than he's supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
But I see the assertiveness, the edge, the drive and desire to be great. I see a lot of what made Phil Simms special, a lot of the Phil Simms intangibles in Jackson Dart. And the funny part about it is, today, with social media and everything that we have now, the attention on Dart coming right out of school has been like bees on a hive. You just described it. Phil didn't get that kind of love and admiration until after he won MVP in the Super Bowl.
Well, with social media age, these things come a lot faster because everybody can see you. The world is smaller. So there were probably people who had never even seen Phil Simms until the Super Bowl, right? Because he wasn't on a national.
Right.
He wasn't on a national. Everything was localized. Everything was regional. But from the moment he steps foot on the field, you get to see Jackson Dart everywhere in the country, even outside of the country. I'll leave you with this because I know I want you to get back to what you were doing. I just wanted to jump in and say what's up.
No, I'm glad you did. I mean, this is such a treat for us to have somebody on the site. This is, being that you're actually out there, boots on the ground, it's really cool.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. What I think is different between Jackson Dart and what Baker Mayfield is I believe there is a part of Baker Mayfield where this was the plan, and a lot of what he does is formulaic. It's rehearsed, it's rhythmic in a way. When I'm talking about like his bravado or his confidence is arrogance, because he really and truly believes that he's owed something. If you hear him talk about his college career and how he started at Texas Tech and then they didn't give him a scholarship even after he started.
Right.
Like, he believed that he had earned that. And then when he went over to Oklahoma, it was almost like an I'll show you. I think there's a level of innocence with Jackson Dart that never existed with Baker Mayfield. I think
that's a really good point. I like the way you describe that. I do.
Yeah, everything that Jackson Dart is doing is in real time. It's him learning, it's him adjusting, it's him getting this information and then like applying it. When he goes out there and dances, he's going out there and dancing because that's what him and his boys do. Like, that's how they get down. That's the climate that he came from. When Baker Mayfield was doing all that dancing early on, it looked cringy. Like, it looked like he was forcing himself to do that because he thought that would endear him to a certain fan base. I don't think Jackson Dart's trying to endear himself to anybody. I think he's just being him.
Oh, I'll tell you, look, Gene, from being around him every day, he's very genuine. He really is. What you see is what you get with him.
And that's the part I like about it.
He loves ball. He absolutely loves ball. He loves his teammates. And he's very excited about coming to work every day, trying to prepare to be the best player he can be.
Yeah, and that's all you can really ask of any ball player, is to come in, give your best, have some excitement, take pride in what you do, and be talented. And I think that's the thing, is he really is a talented guy. And if the work ethic continues to follow the talent, the sky's the limit for this young man.
Well, the interesting thing, Gene, and I'll refer to something that Danan Hughes told me earlier in the interview that we aired on the program, is that in reference to your thoughts about Dart and about Nagy and perhaps some of the predictability of some of what he did in his play calling, Hughes brought up a very good point, that everything that the Chiefs did offensively was all centered around Patrick Mahomes because he is the best player in the National Football League. And in his opinion, to some degree, that choked or suffocated Nagy's offensive creativity, because he knew that everything had to be done off of Mahomes. Kind of like what people used to say in the NBA when the Knicks had Patrick Ewing. And there were actually people who used to say Patrick Ewing shoots too much. It's like, what, are you kidding me?
He's Patrick Ewing.
Are you kidding me?
Like, who else
Patrick
would you
Ewing
want to
dominate the game? Would you just let him go?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's interesting that he would bring that up, saying that maybe now is the play caller with Jackson Dart, and they've got Scatterboo, and they've got Neighbors. Hopefully he'll be healthy when the time training camp comes around. And they've got the Tyrone Tracy. Hopefully a dynamic Theo Johnson who will tweak some of his catching technique and not have so many drops. Hopefully that Nagy, he said, will now be able to maybe breathe a little bit and not be so quarterback centric. And that may actually help him to open up the offense more. It's an interesting concept.
Yeah, it is. I think the reason why I liked Eric Bieniemy and his tenure as the offensive coordinator for Kansas City is that he didn't inherit all of the weapons that Nagy and the previous offensive coordinators had. That was his time, was post Tyreek Hill. His time as offensive coordinator was
Right.
when they had to like really do things differently, and he didn't lean in to Patrick Mahomes. Their run game was really a catalyst, you know, for what they did. They had a really strong foundational run game that they leaned on, and then because of that, it allowed Mahomes to be more dynamic. Remember, they stopped pushing the ball vertically in Kansas City because they really had no vertical threats, and now it was, you know, how can we get the ball out, quick passes? But once Nagy came back and he was the offensive coordinator again, the running game did not hold. And so I just want to know. I just want to know.
No, Gene, I don't want to cut you off, but I think that point is interesting to debate because Pacheco's first year, the Rutgers running back who went to Kansas City, had over 800 yards in his first year with Kansas City. His second year was Nagy's first year as the OC in his second time around. He ran for over 900 yards.
That's fair.
Okay?
That's fair.
And he only played in 13 games. Or I believe he played in 14 games with 13 starts. He ran for over 900 yards, was a huge part of that postseason run to win that Super Bowl. And I thought that proved to me that Nagy could balance out some of the run game with some of the stuff that they were leaning on with Mahomes. And then in subsequent years, unfortunately, the last 2 years, his offensive line wasn't as good. The wide receivers weren't as deep. Kelsey started getting old. Mahomes has been playing banged up. You know, he's had Band-Aids all over his body for the last 2 seasons.
Yep.
And so, you know, at that point, I think I could see why they became more Mahomes-centric, seeing that the pieces weren't as dynamic as they used to be, and they felt that riding Mahomes' shoulders was probably their best shot.
I don't disagree with you, Paul. I don't disagree with you at all. I will just offer this one little note. Is it the first year after somebody establishes a culture that you see the fall off, or is it normally the second and third year where you start seeing the fall off?
You know,
is there a chance that Pacheco season in year 2, the first under Nagy, was a lot of the reverberations of what they were doing before he came back? You know, and then you just saw it and again, you legitimate reasons. They lost a couple offensive linemen in free agency. You know, Kelsey, not what Kelsey used to be. Wide receivers are in and out of the lineup. So I get it. Like all of those things are in play. I'm just saying that's the part that I'm looking for in this next go round for Nagy, to see if he's aware of it and then like he's able to bring it back to that a little more unpredictability, lean in on the running game and make sure that you can establish it and have it as a weapon and not just as like another part of, you know, and then
Dean, I think it's fair. It's fair to say that we need to look at that because we just don't know. It's a wait and see kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm optimistic. It wasn't a sexy hire. I said it. It wasn't a sexy hire for me. I didn't have it on the bingo card. It wasn't something that was going to get me like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, let's go. I was banging the table for them to go down to Louisiana and back the Brinks truck up to get that young boy out of Baton Rouge.
I know
that didn't happen.
I know.
I was banging the table. I said, well, maybe the reason it's taken so long to get the offensive coordinator in here is because they're trying to convince him that now's the time. And I had in my brain that it come up with this whole succession plan. You know, 5 years is the contract for Harbaugh. So 5 years, he gives it a strong 5-year run, and then he bows out, and you hand it over.
Gene, if Nagy has a really good year this year, we know he wants to be a head coach.
That's
he could
the problem.
get an offer at the end of the season, and maybe you could still grab Charlie Weiss Jr.
But now Jackson Dart's on 3 OCs in 3 seasons. There's only been one quarterback who's had consistent success in the league who's been able to have that said, and that's Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
Everybody else has failed.
I know.
Every other quarterback has failed.
The only thing, though, is that Rice would be a reboot. It wouldn't necessarily be a fresh face.
That's true. That would be but I mean, I had it in my brain. Paul, you don't understand. In my mind, I had it. It was so great. Like 5 years for Harbaugh, he gets maybe get a championship, and then you just turn it right over to Weiss. Like it was just great. And now Jackson Dart gets a 10-year run with the same offensive mind in his ear. And I was like, yep, this is the play. And the very next day, Matt Nagy is the offensive coordinator. Go figure.
All right.
Go figure.
Folks, we're going to let Coach Gene Clements go. He is with
Paul, I appreciate you, man.
A Giant Issue podcast. That is part of the New York Giants on SI YouTube channel and media network. He is one of my teammates on this particular platform, and it is so nice of you to call in, Gene. Thank you so much. And here's what I hope for you. I hope that all of your plans go exactly as they're supposed to on your return trip home from the Super Bowl.
I hope so too, because it wasn't very smooth on the way here. That's for sure. Hey, I appreciate it, Paul. Hey, 3,000. We're so close to 3,000 subs, ladies and gentlemen. Go ahead, if you're watching on X, if you're watching somewhere other than on YouTube, go ahead and go to YouTube, hit that subscribe button, get us to 3,000 before they kick off for the Super Bowl. We are so close. We appreciate you. Thanks again, Paul.
You be the man. Take care, Gene.
All right.
Thanks. Coach Gene Clements here, joining us on Big Blue Breakdown Live. It was so nice of him to call in. Honestly, I did not expect him to. It was a surprise to me when all of a sudden he popped up with a video call, and that was quite a surprise and a pleasant one. And folks, I hope that our conversation actually was somewhat informative to you as well, because we were bringing up some topics that I think football people are really interested in discussing. There are some unknowns here with the Giants. We're optimistic. We're hopeful as we see what they've done, but that doesn't mean that everything is going to go exactly as planned. Sometimes, what do they say about better laid plans of mice and men sometimes go awry? So you never know. You never know. But these are certainly things to keep an eye out for as things progress. I'm going to try quickly, as we have now gone to the 2 hours. We're back to the old school when I first started doing this program a couple of years ago, and we were doing 2 and 3 hour shows. I'm going to go through your chats to get down to the bottom, and then we're going to call it a night, folks. So you don't need to do any more phone calls or video calls. We'll let those go until another time. We'll be back again next Wednesday night. Welcome to Big Pat's Sports Talk. Says, good to see you, brother. And of course, I appreciate the fact that you became a super user and a super a chat person. We appreciate it. And thank you very, very much for supporting the program. Armand has been diarrhea of the keyboard tonight, Armand. It's fine. No problem. I tried to get to a whole bunch of your comments, but I'm going to try to see if we can get to a few others here as we close out the program. Welcome to Big Pat Sports Talk. Does add, I think Nagy can do some things with Dart. I believe Nagy's a good hire until proven otherwise. Says, Coach G, man, get all my brothers on tonight. Gene Clements, always fun. Very colorful, very opinionated, does know his football, and he's a good listen. So by all means, give him a check out and see what you got. Armand Duda says, shout out to Locked On Giants. That's where Patty, who actually runs the New York Giants on SI, has her video program over at Locked On Giants. And James O'Keefe says, I always thought Patty Traynor would be a great capologist for the Giants. She has great understanding and ideas regarding that issue, and there's no question about that. Again, there is no one on the Giants beat who knows the financials about the contracts and the salary cap more than Patty. And he does say she certainly studied enough and helps teach us how it works. Patty does mention coming up on Friday's Locked On pod, they'll talk about the option bonuses and other mechanisms the Giants don't often use. That was in the conversation that I had with Gene Clements about Dawn Aponte being the new salary cap guru for the New York Football Giants. Let's see what else here. Let's see. I'm just looking here to see if there's anything else. Armand Duda says, LT said that. Can't get a better compliment than that. I guess he's maybe talking about a comparison between Dart and Sims, but I'm really not quite sure. Oh, hey, Charlie G 8878. Congratulations to Jackson Dart on winning the fan voted award for NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year. Charlie, I have to tell you, I did not see that today. I am unaware of when or where that announcement came out. If that's true, yes, congratulations, and I'm glad for him. You could certainly see how it would be justified. I do know that he was a finalist for the Associated Press NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year. He was a finalist. That I knew. He was also a finalist for the Pepsi NFL Rookie of the Year award, which is a fan vote, and that may be the one that you're talking about. Let me just see very, very briefly here if I can do one quick search and see if I can see that. Let's see. I don't see anything that says he has won that award yet. So, again, Charlie, I don't know what you saw. I don't know that he has actually captured an award as of this moment, but if he has, congrats. If he hasn't, well, I wish him luck in the final tabulations. And Armand says, thanks for stopping by, Coach. God bless. Hope you join us again. Be well, no doubt. Mark B, 8365 says, thanks for jumping on, Coach. Charlie G, 8778 says, that was good stuff. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. It's great when we can talk real football conversation. That's what it's all about for me. Not about hype, not about clickbait. I'm about real football. Let's dig our teeth into real X's and O's football steak. Mark B, 8365 says that was good. All right. And let's see here. JDJ says, Paul, do you think Dexter Lawrence is a Giant next year? Well, yes, he is under contract. And yes, I do believe he'll be here. And quite frankly, he needs to have a bounce back season and play like the all-pro defensive tackle that we all know he can be. Well, folks, we just went over a little bit over the 2-hour mark. I do appreciate everybody for checking in and watching our program tonight. I'll stay a couple more minutes if you like. I'll stay till 10:15. I'm at 10:07 Eastern time. I'll stay a few more minutes if somebody else wants to hit me up here. Instead of Armand Duda, who just can't help himself typing on the keyboard tonight. He is just having a blast with his keyboard. I hope you don't break the machine by the time the program is over. I'm willing to stay on for just a few more minutes. If somebody else would like to come in and potentially ask a question or make a comment that we might be able to address. I do want to tell you once again, folks, if you did not listen early on in the program, about a half hour in, we aired the first part of our interview with Danan Hughes, Bayonne, New Jersey's own Danan Hughes, former wide receiver with the Kansas City Chiefs, as promoted on Twitter all day long today. He has been part of the Chiefs broadcast team for over a decade and has a very detailed understanding, great insight on all about what Matt Nagy brings to the table as a coach and as an offensive coordinator. And again, with the reports that Nagy is going to be the new offensive coordinator for the Giants and be in charge of taking Jackson Dart to the next level, I thought it was very prudent to go get Danan Hughes on this program tonight. And we broke his interview up into a couple of segments. 30 minutes in, it'll be up on the archive when this show goes up to the YouTube archive, and we'll have it indexed for you if you just want to listen to the interview. About 30 minutes in was the first part of the interview. That went on for about 10. Then we took some chats. We went back to the second part of the interview. That went another 10 minutes. And so that's where the meat and potatoes are, the real juice of tonight's program, if you will. Not that the rest of the program wasn't good too, but, there's always got to be a steak on the plate, right? Then there's the potatoes. Then there's the salad. Then there's the dessert. There's a lot of other stuff that you can enjoy. But the steak, I thought tonight was Danan Hughes. And so, again, I invite all of you folks out there, if you like, to go over to your archive, go over to YouTube, and look for the Big Blue Breakdown Live. And that would be very cool if you check out Danan Hughes. And you'll get a lot more information and an education, if you will, about Matt Nagy, so that you don't have to just read it in the newspapers. You're going to get it legit firsthand from somebody who has been in the trenches with this guy. Because as pregame, postgame analyst, and then as game analyst, he travels with the team. He's there with the team at practice. He's at every game. He has a real good inside view. And so I advise you to check it out. All right, let's see what we have here. JDJ says he's under contract, talking about Dexter Lawrence, but with a new regime, he had an underwhelming season, which means nothing is guaranteed. No, I understand that, but no. Dexter Lawrence is going to be a Giant this season, and I believe his deal runs through next year as well. I don't have much doubt that, this defense, which has had trouble stopping the run the last 2 years, even while he's been here, they're certainly not going to get any better if they get rid of Dexter Lawrence, so no matter what they would get back in trade. Scott Young, 1669, says, Paul, any idea who the Giants will select for a quarterback coach for Jackson Dart? Well, Aiden Fink says Eli Manning. That's not going to happen. Eli is too busy doing all the TV stuff that he's doing and coaching his kids in youth sports. Eli's not going to do it. I don't know. Honestly, I know there are people out there who are trying to connect dots, looking through Wikipedia, checking out every crossover, every guy that has, what was it again? 7 levels of Kevin Bacon or whatever it is. Everybody out there, every writer in the New York metropolitan area is checking for those 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, trying to figure out who overlapped who and who connected with who for 6 months, et cetera, et cetera. And then they're just throwing those names out on the social media. I'm not going to bother doing that. It's foolish. It's stupid. It makes no sense. I'm sticking to the facts. Whenever they get the guy here, they get the guy here. And just trust John Harbaugh. He didn't come here to lose. Folks, in his first press conference with the Giants, he uttered the word playoffs. Okay? He believes that a turnaround to be in a playoff team this year is not wholeheartedly out of the question. He's not going to go out and make a statement like that unless, number one, he believes in the bulk of the roster, and number two, he believes he's going to get the staff together that can get that out of these guys. I mean, come on. Let's just use some common sense here. Let's see. And Armand Duda says it's 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Okay. All right. In any event, we will be back once again next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, as we always are during our regular program schedule, to do another hour, 90 minutes, who knows, maybe it'll be more. It'll all depend on you, the fans, because as I always say, this program is for you, the fans. And that'll be our next edition of the Big Blue Breakdown Live. And don't forget, as always, you can always catch Gene Clements as well and his program on the New York Giants on SI YouTube channel and Media Network. And of course, Patty Traynor and her staff of writers constantly provide you all kinds of feature stories and different writings to keep you up to date with all of the daily Giants news. Because after all, my show's only once a week. I would have no voice if I did this show every single day, in addition to the one that I do during the course of the afternoon. So that'll do it for tonight's program. Again, thanks to Danan Hughes of the Kansas City Chiefs broadcast team for joining us tonight. That's all for now. I'm Paul Dottino. So long, everybody.